Excellent. Welcome, students and families. Oh, I cannot look around or I'll unmic myself. Okay. Welcome, students, families, faculty, and staff. Thank you so much for coming to our annual art show and parent reception. I'm Jennifer Borman. I'm a Commonwealth alumna, and tonight I'm a dazzled head of school. I hope you're having a glorious time taking in the artwork around the building. I'm so impressed with the range of the work and how diverse it is in subject matter, medium, technique, and feeling. I salute all of our student artists, but want to particularly thank their teachers. Caleb Colpitz for drawing, painting, and printmaking. Kyla Toomey for ceramics and sculpture. And photography teacher Colleen Fitzgerald. And a shout out in absentia to our photography teacher for the first half of the year, Samantha Nieto. We miss her. So tonight is a feast for the eyes, but throughout the year, the arts weave their way through every aspect of our lives here. Our ears are delighted by performances by the chorus, chorale, and orchestra, led by music teacher David Hodgkins. Our jazz program is led by one of the longest serving teachers at Commonwealth, Mark White. And starting in the fall and arcing through the spring, we are privileged to experience moving theatrical performances directed by Susan Thompson and by our seniors. We also get to bask in the beauty of poetry readings and Shakespeare monologues. The arts have been central to the Commonwealth experience since our founding in 1957. They were taken seriously when I was a student here, and there's been no waning of that commitment over the years. In fact, the 21st century presents us with even a more expansive set of media and art forms. But why are the arts so important to Commonwealth? I teach a course to seniors, 3 of whom you'll hear from tonight, on education policy and practice. And in that class, in a, I'm sure, annoying way, I am always asking students to think about why schools are the way they are. What gets taught? What doesn't get taught? Why? To what purpose or purposes? To what ends? Sound familiar? And today I asked them, why do you think that Commonwealth requires students to take art classes? And why do we think they're valuable? And that turned out to be a hard question to answer. In some ways, it's a hard question to answer because that answer feels so simple. Beauty. We could stop there. Or soul expanding. That also seems like enough of an answer. But I think at Commonwealth, we believe that the arts are more than aesthetic experiences, that they're not just the frosting on the cake, they are the cake and the beautifully swirled frosting. The arts teach us habits of mind and ways of approaching things that are useful as well as beautiful. As I've seen it this year, the arts and academics at Commonwealth are wonderfully complementary. In our academic classes, we insist on precise meanings. In our arts classes, we allow for evocative meanings, and we pursue the ambiguous and the indeterminate. In our academic classes, we continually ask, how does it work? Whether the it is a poem, a chemical reaction, or a political movement. But in our arts classes, we ask, what would happen if? And tonight, you're surrounded by examples of that, what would happen if? I have been impressed over and over at all the ways we are helping students develop both their critical and their creative faculties. And even as we sharpen our pencils for the advanced placement exams this week, we are surrounded by a different kind of excellence tonight. I could go on, but I know you are eager to hear our featured speakers. All three of them have engaged with one or multiple art forms while students here and have brought just as much passion to their academic work. Tonight, each will take some time to talk about what they valued during their time at Commonwealth. Let me begin by introducing Hannah Jenkins, who will be followed by Alice Liang and Dina Pfeffer. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I just want to preface this talk by thanking all my teachers here at Commonwealth who have been so amazing throughout the 4 years, and also especially to my speech advisor, Miss Brewster, and just everyone who helped me out on Monday just running through it and kind of working with me on it. So just so you hear that. I started doing tech for Commonwealth Theater for the most 15-year-old reason possible. Almost all my friends were doing it, and I felt left out. Not exactly the most noble reason to start something, I know, but at the time it made complete sense to me to suddenly commit hours I could be using to do more productive things to hanging out with my friends while pretending to work. After a quick conversation with the stage manager, I was suddenly thrust into the very unfamiliar world that can be the Commonwealth Theater Department. As a new member of the team, I was assigned to one of the more fail-proof jobs, costumes. If a sound or lighting cue was off or missed, or God forbid, if suddenly all the lights suddenly went off, then there would be a pretty good chance that the audience would notice. But no one would really be able to tell if someone went out onto stage in the wrong dress or waistcoat. Since the play we were putting on that year was Arcadia by Tom Stoppard, which happens to partially take place in the 1800s, I was tasked with toting stacks and stacks of waistcoats and floor-length dresses and jackets up and down the stairs. This toting was sometimes broken up by assignments from our stage manager to go out and buy random makeup products to slightly modernize our collection, which mostly had its origins in 2015 or so. But back to the social aspect. That's what I was there for, no matter how much fun organizing Regency era clothing can be. Theater felt like, for me at least, a place where I could really start to develop a solid friend group. After floating from group to group my freshman year and not really getting anywhere in terms of making close friendships, I decided that the best way to develop them would be to latch myself to a certain group where we would all be forced to hang out with each other over long periods of time by nature of obligation. I know just because you do common activities with other people doesn't mean you will become friends with them, but I actually did. I think that any Commonwealth student can attest to the fact that communally stressing out over homework assignments is a great way to make friends. I made such good friends through theater, in fact, that when I suddenly was asked to co-stage manage the next play, I quickly agreed. I really do think that my experience during COVID would have been much lonelier if I hadn't made the strong friendships that I did through theater. A week after the winter play of my sophomore year, we were sent home from spring break and didn't return to the school until that fall in fragmented groups. That summer we talked sometimes on Zoom about how that play seemed to inhabit a very special time period. One of the last times we could all be physically in a room, tightly together. During my junior year, I especially missed the camaraderie and closeness that theater offered to me and to my friends. It seems that without it, the chances that I had to spend time with them were becoming more and more limited. Then, in the spring of last year, as the school began to reopen, an opportunity presented itself, the senior play. After more than a year of Zoom theater productions, the senior play was the first sort of in-person theater event that had happened since the start of COVID. To stay safe, it was completely pre-recorded and filmed outside on the Charles River Esplanade, which, as you can imagine, posed some issues. We had some dogs running into the camera view. We had random people coming up to us and being like, "What are you doing? Why are you wearing these clothes?" And sometimes they took pictures of us, which was just so much fun. The fact that I, as a junior, was entering into a project that was primarily made up of seniors barely crossed my mind. For me, it was simply a way for me to be back in person doing something I loved. Between carting chairs and cameras and prop items back and forth between the school and Esplanade, I became close friends with that group of seniors, exchanging stories and advice, while simultaneously avoiding the questioning eyes of strangers, confused by a group of teenagers were walking around downtown Boston in period clothing. We laughed over the technical issues that came along with trying to film a play outdoors with minimal camera and sound equipment. Looking back, I remember the entire production process being steeped with a level of joy and playfulness that seemed even more heightened after being separated from each other for so long. Even staying up all night video editing after teaching myself to use Adobe Premiere Pro the day before seems somehow exhilarating and exciting to me. After being separated for so long, it just felt like a big celebration to be able to do anything in person with other people. Now, almost at the end of my senior year, I can say that joining the theater community at Commonwealth has been one of the best things I've done with my time here. There is still a part of me that's surprised that that impulse decision I made back in sophomore year came to fruition. But I do think the fact that it did really does say something about the Commonwealth community. If you put in the effort to make friends and put yourself out there, people will not only accept and talk to you, but befriend you. I hope in the coming years that I will be able to find communities that are as open and welcoming as the Commonwealth one was to my scared, apprehensive 15-year-old self. Thank you.
Good job, Hannah. That was a wonderful speech. I also want to begin by thanking all the teachers who have supported me during my time here at Commonwealth, and especially my speech advisor, Mr. Connolly. And here I will start. Dear friends, teachers, and guests, my name is Alice, a senior at Commonwealth School. I am so honored to stand here and talk to you this evening. I enjoy studying psychology and language. So last summer, I worked in Boston University's psycholinguistics lab, in which I learned about what's called the foreign language effect, which explains that in a foreign language environment, people think in a more deliberate and rational mode, make decisions that maximize outcomes, and experience reduced emotional involvement. When I learned the concept, I remembered my time studying at Commonwealth as an experience that has partly conformed to the psychological effect and partly differed from it. Coming from Shanghai, China, and also a new sophomore, I once had many hopes and worries. Apparently, the biggest challenge was that English isn't my first language. At first, concurring with the first two predictions of the foreign language effect, I was unconsciously thinking in this deliberate mode so as to figure out what was the right thing to say and what was the most appropriate thing to do in contexts unfamiliar to me. This mode of critical thinking did help me perform well academically, but in a social context, I wasn't even sure what jokes I could laugh at or how to discern if certain puns were funny. Culture shock inevitably descended upon me. Although I liked to make friends, I wasn't a very outgoing and confident person. So I had to constantly remind myself to be braver in both speaking up and meeting new people and perspectives. In my first few months at Commonwealth, as I listened to people with a curious and open mind, and as we discussed openly about our similar or different interests and backgrounds, I discovered that there was a lot more common ground than differences. We all like making friends, love delicious food, enjoy beautiful art, and want to make a meaningful contribution to our community. And we all care about justice and happiness for all, and we truly enjoy learning. Despite the unfamiliarity of the tongue, there wasn't an insurmountable boundary. Now, 3 years have passed, and I've formed lasting friendships and beautiful memories with my peers in the classroom, in the art studio, at lunch jobs, during field trips to Hancock's, where we had been working and had fun together, during conversations in free periods and beyond. Now I truly believe that differences are not a boundary, but an irreplaceable human connection for people of different nationalities, identities, personalities, and perspectives. All the meaningful bonds I've made here at Commonwealth have made me feel at home, proud, and secure. I'm grateful that I made up my mind to come to Commonwealth and step outside my comfort zone. I've often heard that we cannot gain a comprehensive view of ourselves if we're limited to the places we feel safest. Contrary to the third prediction of foreign language effect, my academic exploration of Commonwealth has always been an emotionally engaging journey. Before I studied US history, I had no idea what the Civil War entailed, but the further I researched and heard the very voice of African Americans during the Civil War, the more I was struck by the agony interwoven with the hopes of the people who have been so long oppressed and dispossessed. Studying here at Commonwealth at times felt like navigating the Atlantic Ocean on a small skiff. How breathtaking the surface of the water is when peaceful, and how powerful the billows are that can easily thrust me to deep water. But I have always known, though, that there is no real danger, except maybe the danger of forgoing all biases, assumptions, and expectations, and embracing all new knowledge of the world and for myself. What am I looking for if not something fearfully beautiful that I cannot contain unless I exert all my strength and hope, without reservation, to discover the truth behind the physical world, to listen to the music of the poems and prose, to feel the struggle of the humankind through our history, to explore the delicate function of human mind, and with all possible courage and endeavor, to repay the passion and trust every teacher has offered me. An eminent ancient Chinese philosopher, Mencius, once wrote, people thrive in calamity and perish in soft living. When I began this journey, what I sought was not quite a life of calamity, but still exactly the opposite of soft living. I wished to challenge myself with new ideas and knowledge and live a fuller life. I wished to meet new people who might be drastically different from myself, whom I can learn from. I wished to be treated as an adult, not a child, and thus really become a dependable person. Commonwealth has indeed bestowed upon me precious knowledge and experience, exposed me to a world of new encounters, and spurred my potential. Once I thought the purpose of learning was to search for the missing pieces to fill in the negative spaces of the unknown, to seek the flawless final answer to all problems. However, I am now empowered to find ultimate fulfillment in the challenging but refreshing exploration itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. That was really lovely. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Thanks. Yeah, like the others said, thank you to all the adults and peers who've supported me during my time here, to Ms. Haber, who helped me with my speech, and also to many of my teachers who introduced me to some of the things that I will reference in my speech. So thank you. I'd like to tell you about the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, which is when we begin the year-long cycle of Torah readings again, starting with Genesis. It falls around mid-October, which means that at the beginning of every school year, I get to hear about the beginning of the world. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and a wind from God moved over the surface of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Out of all the verses in the Torah, these three might be the most important to me. Everything I know about the power of words, about art, and the need I feel to create it can be found in those very first sentences. God's words, Yehi or let there be light, are what the philosopher J.L. Austin called a performative utterance. He wrote that we make a performative utterance when, quote, in saying what I do, I actually perform that action. He gave the example of naming a ship, writing that when I say I name this ship the Queen Elizabeth, I do not describe the christening ceremony, I actually perform the christening. In the same way, when God says, let there be light, God is not describing a wish for there to be light. God is actually forming the light out of nothing, using only words. To create light from a void is impossible according to the laws of thermodynamics, and to even conceive of light when you have known only darkness seems impossible as well. Yet that is the power of God's words. That is the power of creation. Commonwealth, like any institution, has ideals it aspires to, but does not always attain. This means that, among other things, school can sometimes feel like an unrelenting march towards an ill-defined finish line. To take another example from the Torah, it's easy as a student here or anywhere to feel, with each additional task, as if you've been wandering in circles in the desert for far longer than you should have been. To take a turn and feel as if you've been here before. What can possibly lead us out of the desert? For me, it has always been art. I think often of something Jeanette Winterson wrote in an essay called Art Objects. She wrote that though the universe, quote, lacks nothing we need, the tragic paradigm of human life is lack, loss, finality, a primitive doom-saying that has not been repealed by technology or medical science. The arts stand in the way of this doom-saying. Art objects. The nouns become an active force, not a collector's item. Art objects. This active force that Winterson speaks of, this objection to our mundane and sometimes sorrowful existence, is not just life-enhancing, it is life, for me and for everyone. What's made this year worth getting through has been my time in the ceramics and printmaking studios and those moments late at night when everything is finally quiet and something true opens in my mind and flows through the pen. When we make art, we take part in something a little like God's enterprise in Genesis, creating something where there was nothing, creating meaning where there was only despair. As an example, I'll tell you about a song I finished a few weeks ago. I began to write it on a day in December when an old friend and I were walking hand in hand down the Commonwealth Mall in the evening, and there were lights strung up on the trees and a light flurry of snow was coming down. There on the mall, I saw us all of a sudden as two metal balls hanging in a giant Newton's cradle, swinging together, then apart, then together again as we held hands and walked towards the gardens. That same month, I jotted down a line that I did not know was part of the same song, just one line. There's a burning bush on Elm Street at the crest of the big hill. I liked it, but I couldn't get anything else out of it, so I let it be. That's the thing about making art. We are not God. Creation is not easy for us. Sometimes, often, the words do not come when I want them to, and I feel caught in a cosmic struggle against myself. I had to wait until April to finish this song that I did not know was a song. I thought about visiting a diner where the waitress had the same name as you. From there, all the other images fell into place. The diner, the burning bush, Newton's cradle. What connected them was not the images themselves, but the feeling of uncanniness, of cracks in the surface. There have been times when I thought I had lost whatever mechanism inside me is making these songs. Every time the words come back and prove me wrong, I feel reborn. I am recreated. That should be okay.
I invite you to enjoy the rest of the evening by looking at the art and talking to our senior speakers and enjoying some refreshments in the library. But delighted to have you share the evening with us.